Well, hello there. Welcome. It is so incredibly easy to understand the situation that is going on in today's world. If you didn't have people like this saying these types of things,
If you are sick and tired of your government being ransacked by Donald Trump and his minions, literally taking away healthcare from your neighbors, stealing food off of the table from seniors and children, and generally being uncool with the fact that our neighbors are being disappeared, P.S. without due process, it is just called kidnapping, then show up and use your voice. Put your body on the line and use non-violent direct action, which is one of the most important tools in our toolbox to say, I am not okay. I will not go silently into the night. I will join arms with my friends, with my neighbors, and with people who generally believe that folks should be able to afford their lives, should be treated with dignity and as human beings. Then we need to see you there. If you are sick and tired of your government being ransacked by Donald Trump and his minions, literally taking away healthcare from your neighbors, stealing food off of the table from seniors and children,
then you wouldn't have this situation unfold.
And I want to switch gears to the other big story that you were right in the middle of. Federal officers have their hands full in Minnesota right now. One officer had his finger bitten clean off by an agitator yesterday. There are some pretty troubling photos of that online if anybody wants to look. Have you heard from any of the Democratic leadership in Minnesota about that? Tim Walz, Jacob Frey.
No, they haven't expressed any concern for injuries to our officers, and that's been going on for weeks. These are not just agitators anymore, they're violent protests. In fact, the state and the city of Minneapolis abandoned this area in downtown Minneapolis because they couldn't control the situation by the amount of people that have come in just trying to disrupt and impede law enforcement operations. And, you know, frankly, this didn't turn violent until we uncovered the fraud in Minneapolis. We were there, ICE and CBP have been there and operating for years in Minneapolis. We saw the violence start to happen when the fraud became uncovered of the billions of dollars that was stolen from American taxpayers under the leadership of Governor Walz and Mayor Frey.
And the reason that that situation is unfolding is because of this situation.
You know, we could say that there were many red flags. These weren't red flags. These were neon flashing signs. These were fireworks. There were so many signs about the fact that this kind of fraud was going on, especially when you take into consideration what was just reported about the millions of dollars being flown out of Minnesota, out of the Minneapolis airport to Somalia. Over 80% of the Somalia households receive some form of public assistance. Many of them are on welfare. So your first question is, if they're on welfare, how are they getting millions of dollars to send back to the homeland? Number one. Number two, if they're on welfare, why do they need childcare? They're not working outside of the home. Why would there be this number of Somalia childcare centers? I mean, you can go step by step by step as you peel this onion, and you realize that there was layer after layer after layer after layer of fraud. And everybody in the state of Minnesota that was responsible for actually ensuring that this money was appropriately spent basically said, well, I don't know. It never occurred to me that there could be fraud here. You think about it and you just know that the level of corruption here is probably one of the largest frauds that has ever been perpetrated against the American taxpayer and the state taxpayers in Minnesota.
And the reason that you see all the unrest throughout Minnesota, and I'm pretty sure that there'll be other areas coming soon, the reason that that's happening is because of this.
I'm very confused about why the conversation is about what you're talking about instead of focusing on what really matters, which is why in one city, in one place do we have these problems. We deport 10 times the number of illegal aliens out of Texas than we do out of Minneapolis. Why do we hear nothing out of Texas about any of the same problems that we have in Minneapolis? I'll tell you why. Because in Texas, we have the cooperation and support of local law enforcement so that we can do these operations safely, keeping U.S. citizens and others protected and safe. That is not what we have in Minneapolis. And the fact that it's the administration that's being blamed for the utter failure of leadership in Minneapolis is not right, it's not appropriate,
But are
and
you
it's also
saying those
not
officers?
true.
If you had law enforcement people in blue states that fight so freaking hard against the rule of law, if you had people in positions of power that believed and operated their situations like this.
Hello, I'm Sheriff Grady Judd. I've spent my entire adult life in law enforcement, and I have never heard of one law enforcement agency not helping another when they call for help until this weekend, when a chief of patrol where the Chicago Police Department instructed the police officers not to run in and help their colleagues who were calling for help, who were under attack by a bunch of people clearly violating the law. That's scary. Let me give you the antithesis of that. We had a single man resist ICE agents and get away from them in our community. We sent a helicopter, a drone, K9, and 50 law enforcement officers to surround an area, and we found that guy who violently resisted ICE, and we locked him up in jail where he should have been. If you allow anarchists and criminals to run wild in your community, people will die. People will be shot. Now, let me say this. For other law enforcement leaders across this state and nation, you need to be standing up saying the same exact thing that I am. Because when you have a breakdown of the rule of law, when you allow anarchists, criminals to take over the streets and attack law enforcement officers and then not send them help, that's a slippery slope, a real slippery slope.
You wouldn't have things like this.
Yeah, you know, this could all come to an end right now if Tim Walz and Jacob Frey would simply cooperate. In cities and states across this country, you have local officials, local law enforcement, local political leaders who are simply cooperating with the federal government, with DHS, and with ICE. What does that mean? It means you get to go into the jails and you get to take custody of illegal aliens in an administrative way, in the hallway, as opposed to having to send ICE agents into a community and chase them down because the local politicians in Minnesota have let them out into the street. This can all end today if the Democrats in Minnesota, you're not seeing this chaos anywhere else. The ingredients that are causing the chaos are unique to Minnesota. It's called Walz and Frey. Cooperate,
that's
and this
silly.
ends.
Like
The government has privately and publicly every day of this begged for cooperation from the state officials in Minnesota. They beg every single day.
If they've done that stuff, then why aren't they telling the American people that they've done that? Why are they
literally do it on their
wait a minute. The image
public
the
statements
government
every day.
wants.
All ICE and federal law enforcement are trying to do are remove people like this off of the streets of Governor Walz's city in Minneapolis and of his state in Minnesota. If you look at some of the individuals in this photo, these are all illegal alien criminals who came into our country under the previous administration. This is some of the most disturbing crimes you will ever read about. And there's only a few reporters in this room who will actually talk about these individuals. This is all ICE is trying to do. They are trying to remove people like this from Governor Walz's state. And so, yes, he should pick up the phone and he should say that he will cooperate with this president and with the federal government in making Minnesota safer, because that's all President Trump and his administration want to do.
And with things like that, you most certainly do not want to be left unprepared for any situation.
Food supplies have been completely wiped out. We have our evacuation of all counties. I report complete devastation. We have a giant squall, cloud, gobbling up everything in their path. This is a total loss of life.
There are forces in this world that remind us of how fragile we are. We thought we were safe. We thought it could never happen to us. Then life like a fog descends upon us. blanketing our memories. Through the haze, we travel its hidden paths, lost in its secret places. And when the storm, turbulent and immovable, forces us to shelter, we remember. It calls to us, calls us back. Back to the ports and the harbors of our past. We fight the currents that pull and drag us off course, not a light or star to chart the way. And when we arrive, we don't always know it at first, the places we once loved guised by time. Then we see it, the place we've been trying to get back to. Safe at last, we've found our way home.